Welcome to the Clarion Podcast, the official podcast of the Clarion, DU's school newspaper and the voice of the pioneers. I'm Dustin Amick, and this is our third episode after a week off. Today we'll be talking lacrosse and the playoff picture. Next, we'll be looking at how the Colorado Rockies have been faring this season and whether playoffs are a possibility this year. After that, we'll talk about some movies that are in theaters right now. All right, so we're here with news editor Sasha Kandrach. How are you, Sasha?
I'm doing great. Dustin, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. I heard that men's lacrosse just had a big win this weekend.
They did. They beat Air Force pretty soundly, 17-10.
Nice.
In the first round of the NCAA tournament. They were 5th seed heading into it, so got the win at Peter Barton, and they're headed to the second round in Hempstead, New York, facing big rival Notre Dame.
What rank is Notre Dame?
They're 7th. They're ranked 7th.
Who's ranked number 1?
Maryland is ranked number 1.
Okay. Are they still in it?
Yep, they're still in it, and Maryland actually lost last year to North Carolina, so it'll be interesting to see if they've been in the championship for the past 2 seasons. They played us when we won it back in 2015, and then they played North Carolina in the championship game last year, and they lost, so it'll be interesting to see if they can
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, but hopefully not. Obviously, want DU to get it this year.
Yeah, what are DU's prospects moving into this game against Notre Dame?
5 of the last 7 games against Notre Dame have gone into overtime, so you can almost, as Coach Tierney said post-game with Air Force, you can almost put your bets on this game going into overtime in Hempstead, New York.
Okay.
Notre Dame's got a high-power offense. They have one of the best, strongest defenses in the nation. They're just a strong, big, physical team. They're both powerful, elite lacrosse teams outside of the Eastern time zone. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me about the club women's lacrosse team. I hear that they just won the national championship.
They did, and they're the first program to repeat in club lacrosse history. They beat Loyola 9-6, and they went on a 13-game winning streak. They had a couple All-Americans for the WCLA, Women's Club Lacrosse Association, in case you don't know what that acronym means.
I did not.
Yeah, and they actually had a really interesting story where they had their goalie, who's naturally right-handed, but they sat her out and they played their second-string left-handed goalie the entire duration of the 60 minutes against Loyola, because they just thought that would give them, they watched film on the Loyola team, and they knew that would give them an edge against the Loyola attack, and it did. Served them well, obviously, because they got the W and pulled off the victory. So it was actually, we had our former editor-in-chief, Jill Query, on the team, so kind of cool, representing the Clarion, So awesome for them to pull the W and keep representing the lacrosse capital of the West.
Well, Sasha, always a pleasure. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Thanks, Dustin. It's always great to be on your lovely show. I enjoy it.
All right. Now we have 2 known Rockies fans on with us, executive editor Ryan Ninesling and entertainment editor Madeline Zann. They're here to talk about how the Rockies season is going. So, how is it going?
Well, for the first time in a few years.
Is one of their best seasons ever. Actually, they broke a couple franchise records, I think.
And it's actually looking like it's sustainable. They've come out the last couple of years hot in April and then have fallen off in May, and then by June they're essentially out of it. But so far it's actually looking like this could be sustainable. They could end with a 85-plus win season.
Well, yeah, which is great coming off last season. I think the changes that they've made in the off-season have really paid dividends already.
Bringing in bullpen help, bringing in a new manager, and Bud Black.
Yeah, Bud Black, I think, is a really good fit for this team. He's shown that already and how he's managed the bullpen. He's
so much better than how Walt Weiss managed the bullpen.
Genius and a madman. The bullpen really has been the backbone, I think. For the, what are we, like 20... we're like 6-0 or something like that in one-run games, which...
Yeah, and I think...
Something close to that, which last year was just not even a thing.
Last year, the bullpen coming in after the 6th inning or before was just a moment of, oh dear God, how are we going to survive this game?
Yeah. And recently, in the past couple weeks, the bullpen has shown that it's not invincible. I mean, Jordan Lyles, especially, who they keep oddly pitching as their long guy.
Jordan Lyles, he came from Houston. He's been with the team for a few years. Started out as a starting pitcher, had some freak injuries, just never really recovered or got his confidence back or something. But guaranteed it'll be 2 outs, 2 strikes. He thinks he's got it, and all of a sudden he gives up a hit, and then he gives up another hit, and then he gives up a run, and then he gives up another one.
And they keep relying on him in situations where I do not understand why they are going to him, and he has really been the weak spot in the bullpen.
Meanwhile, our closer, Greg Holland, who's coming off Tommy John surgery, has been amazing, has 16 saves, tied for the most, at least in the National
16
League.
Straight consecutive saves.
Yeah, hasn't blown a save yet, which is
and his ERA
miraculous.
Is like, what? 106.
Yeah.
So
which is just stupid.
I think which is just ridiculous.
Meanwhile, Jordan Lyles has a 7.94 ERA and 17 innings pitched.
Yeah. Yeah, so which is pretty rough. The other big signing was Mike Dunn. Mike Dunn has been an interesting signing. The beginning of the season, he was up there with Holland in that he was just shutting people down. And then they put him on the DL, I think for... Do you remember what?
A shoulder?
Yeah, it was for a shoulder strain.
Yeah.
And he has been a little rough since he's come back.
Maybe
Allowed a couple hits when he shouldn't have. That kind of thing. But to the point, he's still...
solid.
Still pretty solid. The walks that we are issuing are absolutely... Every time we are losing games, you can tie it back to walks in kind of perilous situations. I mean, whether that's with starters or the bullpen, we have really, really struggled with doing stuff like walking pitchers, walking guys in the 8-hole, like...
Yeah, all of a sudden maybe 2 outs, walking a couple guys, all of a sudden they've got a rally going, or starting off the inning with a couple of walks and getting yourself in a hole.
And that's been an issue with...
Which Sensatella did last game, but was able to get himself out of it.
A lot of the argument about the Rockies right now and how well they're doing is they're like, all right, we have this great rotation, but they're all young guys.
Really, very. Antonio Sensatella's been amazing. He's my age. I think he's a year older, barely.
Kyle Freeland's
25.
Local Denver guy.
Yeah, Chatwood is the old guy, and he's 27.
Yeah, so very young staff, and
Jonathan Gray is on the disabled list right now. He's also very young. So it's a question of sustainability with this young of a rotation. Are they going to last?
What I'm seeing with the young guys in the walks is they get into trouble where they get into hitters' counts, and they're looking too hard for the wipeout pitch or to get the double ground ball. Or double play ground ball. Double play ground ball. Like, they're looking too much. I mean, you got to...
They start pressing. They get in trouble, and they start to press a little bit because they get nervous.
Yeah, you got to get out by out. I mean, if you get a strikeout or you get a double play, that kind of thing, that's great.
It doesn't have to be a pretty out. It just needs to be an out. It needs to be an out.
Yeah, and that's the... Right now, they all want to be aces, which is great. I mean, the enthusiasm is definitely there. I mean, I feel like... In past years, we have starting rotations, but it feels like, God, they don't even want to play baseball. Like,
right, they're just dragging about having to pitch at Coors Field.
Yeah,
and
but this is a very committed team.
Yeah, so. I mean, going into the year, center fielder Charlie Blackmon, they asked him, what he'd been working on the offseason. He said winning, which I think is just kind of the mindset of this entire team right now. I mean, you have Mark Reynolds, who last year was our off and on first baseman, struggled. He's one of the older guys on the team, signed him to a minor league contract, fought his way up, and now he's leading
easily
the team in batting average, home runs, RBIs.
The guy is just so clutch. Yeah. I mean, you can just, if you're going to guarantee on anybody on the team right now for a hit, it's going to be Mark Reynolds.
Yeah, he's having an all-star season.
Yeah, he is absolutely phenomenal right now. He's giving Ian Desmond a run for his money. The one thing that this team has that it has not traditionally is depth. I mean, we have depth in the pitching staff. We have depth on the bench.
And the years that we've gone to the playoffs, it's because we've had depth all around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's looking good. They came off a great homestand. They either won or tied all of their series in the past homestand.
6-4, beat the Cubs.
Split the series with the Dodgers, who is their NL West rival at this point.
Yeah, and then beat the Diamondbacks, which the Diamondbacks going into that series were hot. I mean, they were unstoppable. And we really, even in the game we lost, I believe it was relatively close.
Yeah, we lost 6 to 3.
6 to 3,
so
which
not
at
bad.
Coors is
Not bad at all.
yeah, not bad at all.
But
So
the thing is, we're going on our longest road trip of the year, playing the Twins, playing the Reds, playing the Phillies. So no one who's going to be killer, but it's still, I think, seeing how we come out at the end of May is going to be...
the Twins should be a gimme series. The Reds, you never know with Cincinnati. They're going to give or take. The Phillies are actually turning a lot of heads right now. We're at a vital point in the season. I mean, it's only May, but with our standings right now, I think we really need to keep the momentum up.
Yeah, I mean, currently we're
this
still
series will
leading
help.
the National League West, which going into the end of May, and actually being able to look forward and say we've actually got a shot at this and we could be buyers at the deadline and not sellers is a pretty good feeling.
Yeah.
So is the playoff picture looking hopeful at this point?
It's a long season.
It's a long season. I mean, 160 games.
Yeah.
But
You never know. You need 10 pitchers, 10 starting pitchers, if not more. We don't know what's going to happen. But
I feel pretty good.
yeah,
I mean,
me too.
going back to the depth, if we need to send somebody down, and get somebody else in the rotation, we have a lot of options. I mean, Germán Marquez has been great. I feel like he's earned his spot. Jeff Hoffman had a pretty good outing the other day.
Decent, but
Yeah,
5 2/3, 6
He
innings.
is an interesting guy because I personally feel like he'd be a better bullpen guy.
Yeah.
He's a
and
hard throwing.
He's our last-ditch hope to get something out of the Troy Tulowitzki trade as well.
Yeah, that was looking like to be a bad trade for us, and that would be nice to get something out of that trade. And I think he's proving that there's something there for him. I think he is, other than Gray, he's definitely one of our best strikeout pitchers that we have in the farm system. The feeling that we had last year still remains, and that the off-season moves have played huge dividends, and honestly, just players who have stepped up have really...
Yeah, like Pat Valleca and
Pat
Mark
Valleca,
Reynolds.
Mark Reynolds, even Parra, who I'm not a huge fan of Colorado Parra. His batting average last year was terrible.
He was hurt.
He was swinging at anything that came at him. His on-base percentage was terrible. But this year, he's been another one who's really stepped up. So, again, with the depth, has definitely worked in our favor. And I feel like it will continue to work through the All-Star break and into the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, Maddie, thank you for your very extensive insights on this.
Feel free to edit.
Yeah. Daily.
Also, you could
conversation.
truly just record us watching a game together, except you'd have to bleep out
the
another word.
swearing.
It's bad.
Yeah, but no, it's good. So.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Of course,
Thanks.
anytime.
Okay, and now we're gonna talk about some movies that have just been released in theaters. We have Ryan here with us again. Ryan, what do we have? I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm a week late, but I really enjoyed it.
So I was thinking we would talk about Guardians of the Galaxy and then talk about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which also just came out, and then maybe do a little preview of Alien next week.
For sure.
Yeah, so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, obviously, same kind of crew coming back, kind of for another adventure type thing. It's interesting that it doesn't really follow this typical studio plot of, it really solves the villain problem. I won't really spoil it too much, but really there's no plot where they have to go out and the villain eventually, is there from the beginning, and then they spend the whole movie, and then there's a break. This standard kind of Marvel
the Marvel
script structure.
Marvel has really throwaway villains, but this one, it was very rooted. This villain, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it was very rooted in character development, and it was very contained. It was very about Guardians of the Galaxy. It wasn't about building to the next Marvel movie.
Yeah, it was,
which I liked.
Very much its own thing, and I feel like part of that, and one reason the movie works so well, is it's the only Marvel property other than Avengers, the first two Avengers movies, that is written and directed by one person, which is James Gunn.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have this very set studio house style. All movies all look the same. And this one, I feel like, because it was James Gunn and the first one was so successful, they really let him kind of
They just
run
go
away
at
with it.
Yeah.
They really let him kind of give into his sensibilities. I don't think it's necessarily better than the first one. I don't think it's worse either.
No, I think there was some pacing issues throughout. The plot moved along pretty swiftly, and then there were some very slow parts that were fine, but
I think improvements
weren't too exciting.
Improvements. What improvements were very good. Again, the villain problem, as we talked about, huge improvement over any Marvel film, not even the first Guardians film. The humor, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. In the first movie, they were like trying to make Star-Lord the straight man in scenes where he wasn't being funny. But really, he's not the straight man. I mean,
absolutely not.
I felt this movie, where some characters shine, like Gamora, Star-Lord and Rocket especially were a little forced. Rocket especially. I didn't really, none of Rocket, and maybe this is Bradley Cooper's voice acting, but it just really didn't resonate with me this time around. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, they tried to kind of talk about Rocket Raccoon's meanness, and they tried to dig into that, but it made him more unlikable, and therefore made me care about him less.
I felt like the end result worked very well. The last scene, which I won't spoil, he kind of has an emotional, cathartic moment, and it's very genuine, and it works, and it serves as a nice little end note to the film. However, the build-up to that climax,
it wasn't enjoyable.
Yeah, it really felt very forced, very inorganic. Didn't feel like the character at all, because, I mean, he's an asshole.
Exactly.
But not to the point of cruelty, you know what I mean? Like, he's kind of...
It's just a dick.
The whole point of the first movie and the crew dynamic is, like, they're all, like, kind of a bunch of weirdos hanging out, and, and they make fun of each other and stuff like that. Drax does that very well. I mean, you see it in the trailers, and then you see it in the movie itself, the way he kind of, his social awkwardness.
He's very blunt.
Yeah, he's very blunt, like, calling Star-Lord, like, you're
pathetic.
Yeah. So that, the characters, which is what this movie really relies on, Marvel gave James Gunn a huge chance to play around with them in this kind of interesting world. This is a solid Marvel entry. I mean, at this point, it still suffers from some of the issues that they have. You still need the big showy ending where they blow all the budget in 20 minutes. And it's hard to tell what's going on. They make fun of it a little bit. The one other thing that worked very well about the first movie that I felt didn't work here is the reliance on the soundtrack. It was very unique and very cool in the first one, and obviously, so I knew they were going to go back to that.
But they leaned into it hard this time, and I'm like, they're going to pick an old song that your dad likes.
Yeah. There is a Fleetwood Mac moment that works very well.
Oh, I love Fleetwood Mac, and I really appreciate it.
And that is the one time, and the opening credits. The opening credits and the Fleetwood Mac moment, they both worked very well. Otherwise, it felt a little... It
was just like, let's put in a song that I like from the 80s.
Yeah, so
and that was basically it.
Obviously, from what we've talked about, where the improvements are, great, but the things that were bad were definitely worse than the first movie, so I feel like they're pretty on par with each other. They complement each other nicely.
Yeah.
But overall, letting James Gunn kind of run away with his weirdness, I mean, he obviously has a weird history, was a big success, and I really enjoyed this movie.
Absolutely.
All you do is yell at each other. You're not friends.
No, we're family.
All right, so now you have, you saw King Arthur this weekend.
King Arthur,
tell me about that.
Yes, so King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, just for anybody who doesn't know, is the newest movie from Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie is one of the weirdest directors, I think, working in Hollywood right now in terms of what he's decided to do with his style. I mean, how he started out was he was this kind of, London guy, he's a Cockney guy.
Yeah.
Who wanted to take, I feel like, he wanted to kind of rip off that Scorsese, Goodfellas type gangster movie and bring it to England
Yeah.
with the Cockney thing. So obviously he started off with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and then moved into Snatch,
Yes.
and which are great films. And he started doing this thing where he takes very old properties and he kind of puts his style with them. So obviously the most well-known one is Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., which I love. So now he's continuing that trend of taking old stuff and putting his spin on it with King Arthur. I mean, which is obviously one of the oldest tales.
Fairy
ever.
tales, yeah.
And he does some interesting things with it. It got absolutely ripped.
Yeah.
By the critics, it
Bombed at the box office.
It did absolutely terribly at the box office.
$175 million to make. That's before the huge marketing spend, and it only made $15 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Did not do well at all. So going into this film, I did not have very high expectations. I walked out of it wondering why it had done so poorly. I thought it was a very just purely fun movie. I think it's B-movie schlock, and it knows it's B-movie schlock, and it does it very well, and it's very confident. A lot of people accused it of being smug, which I can see in the kind of... He very much buys into his style here.
Yeah.
And applies it to King Arthur thing, which some people didn't like. I thought was brilliant. The movie is at its most fun when it's its most Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie's known for these very fast-cut montage, crazy music type, lots of things going on, setting up exposition, and I feel like it works very well here. Which something I should mention in that is that this is one of the most unique and memorable scores I've heard for a movie in a long time.
Really? Okay.
It is this absolutely strange folk metal, very breathy, like there's lots of breathing in it, and like you could hear it a little bit in the trailers, but I wasn't sure if it was actually part of the soundtrack, and it turns out it is. And it's by Daniel Pemberton. He took this weird, let's make King Arthur a gangster, basically.
Nice. Yeah, it's very street level.
Yeah, street level, grimy type thing, and turned it into music, and it just works really, really well. And going back to the Guy Ritchie-ness of it, it's an interesting film because I feel like people don't like it because of how Guy Ritchie it is, but also how much it buys into these kind of fantasy, not stereotypes, but kind
Tropes?
of... Tropes, yeah. It does that. I feel like the third act in particular is kind of a mess.
Okay.
It does kind of devolve into a CGI fest. I mean, the ending battle is basically straight out of a video game. But I think it still works, building off the rest of the film. And the movie never feels very boring, which to me, a lot of, these generic blockbusters that we get in the summer are just endlessly boring.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that it took this very ballsy approach with the material that I don't think Marvel movies, even Guardians of the Galaxy to a degree, is still very stuck in its structure, or any other big tentpole type movies are doing these days. So I really appreciate it. I can understand the criticism, but what from I'm gathering from my reaction and then reactions on the internet of like non-critic type people who I'm normally very much a critic. I'm kind of a snob. I'm usually in line with how critics are feeling. I was very in disagreement with this on this film. I thought it was very fun, has its problems, but kind of takes them in stride. I thought it was a fun time in the movies.
Okay, good.
You wanted the prophecy. This is your prophecy. The man who pulled sword from stone. Behold, your born king.
Well, let's look forward to next week. We have Alien Covenant coming out. That's the sequel to 2013's Prometheus.
Yes, it's a continuation of the prequel to the original
series
Alien,
that Ridley Scott is working on.
But it's a sequel to Prometheus.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm a huge Alien fan.
How did you feel about Prometheus?
I am one of the few that actually thought Prometheus was all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Okay, I thought... Visually, it was a masterpiece. It's just very, very, for a science fiction film.
Sure.
Absolutely beautiful. Ridley Scott if I was a filmmaker, I would not be able to churn out the kind of stuff he does at his age visually. I mean, he's just very inventive. Visually, that movie was just absolutely a awe from beginning to end, especially the weird parts. But and I liked the characters of that movie. I thought David, Michael Afton, who's also in this movie as a kind of an antagonist, is what from I'm gathering. But he plays actually two characters in this movie, so that'll be interesting to see him play against himself.
Yes.
He was very good. I liked Idris Elba's character in that movie. I thought Noomi Rapace was a pretty serviceable lead. Mm-hmm. However, the script of that movie is a disaster.
Yeah, so I think the problem with this prequel series is that the Alien series has always been about Ripley. It's been about Sigourney Weaver and her character and her journey. And now these movies, the problem with the prequel series as a whole is that it just becomes any other horror movie where everyone is killed off. And then you just move on to the next one.
The characters in these movies are very stupid.
They're stupid. You don't care about them, and you know that they're not going to make it to the next movie.
Right.
And I can already tell that this is what's going to happen with Alien Covenant. It's going to be a visual treat, and it's probably going to have some really cool action and some good thrills, but at the end of the day, it's not going to really build anything for me.
I think it'll work more for me because from what I'm gathering from the trailers and some of the early advanced reviews that I've read, that kind of thing, is it's definitely a return to the horror roots.
Okay.
I mean, Prometheus had its moments. I mean, that weird, quote-unquote, abortion C-section scene.
That was gross, but I didn't find it scary.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't scary, but it was one of the grossest, which Alien's pretty gross. Like, that's what it's known for. It was one of the...
No, I hope this movie's grosser.
Yeah. I want more grossness. Yeah. But I've read it's almost this kind of haunted house Hammer films from the 50s.
Okay.
Kind of weird... almost ghost story type thing. So I'm kind of excited for that. Again, I'm a huge Alien fan. I didn't think Prometheus was that bad, so I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Well, I'm excited to talk with you about it next week. So thanks, Ryan.
Where is it?
That's it for this week. A new edition of the Clarion will be on newsstands Wednesday, May 17th. I'd like to thank Sasha Kandrach, Ryan Ninesling, and Madeline Zann for joining. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.